Right, yeah. All right, guys. We're live. I'm with Dave, the Irish Hotspur, and I've got Jack here today, guys. So right, who wants to start with anything? First of all, Dave, we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, work away.
Yeah. Just well, this is to both of you, really. First of all, Dave, how did you get into supporting Spurs?
Yeah, look, for me, my old lad was a huge Spurs fan. Living in Ireland at the time, he used to listen to a lot of the Spurs games over the radio. And he was in the army. He ended up buying himself out of the army, which you had to do at the time. And he moved across to England and sort of settled in Croydon. And being there, he started going to Spurs games, and that obviously met my mother. They had a great night and ended up producing one of the biggest legends on the planet, me. And ever since then, my old lad just started bringing me to games, put Spurs on me, brought me all the new Spurs kits, and I'm talking about full kits, not just jerseys, full kits. He used to bring me to the park in them and everything. I used to run around thinking I'm David Ginola without the hair. But ever since then, it sort of just took a hold of me. I remember the very first book I ever received was a book on Arsenal and Tottenham's history, and how it come about, all the results and everything else in the past and stuff like that. And I remember reading that from front to back, and I was just absolutely hooked on Tottenham for ever since then. So that book was probably one of the only books I've ever read in my life, and actually, one that sort of made me understand a lot more about Tottenham at a young age than maybe other people would at a young age and stuff like that. So ever since then, that's where I developed the passion. That's where I understood the hatred, in these derby games and stuff like that. And it's just grew since there. I never ever wanted to be a YouTuber. I sort of fell into it, and here I am, find myself talking about Tottenham on a daily basis. But I've got my old lad to thank for all of that. And not only that, look, my mother as well, when I better mention her because, she'd be on my back otherwise. But, she used to come down to the park. She used to basically be a dummy for me to practice my skills and skin around and stuff like that. So credit to my parents, and not only that, but they also sort of, up until I was about 14, 15, they funded my love for this club through kits and books and stuff like that. So that's how I got into Tottenham.
Okay, interesting, Jack.
I think it's because I'm delusional, Ryan. I think it's because I'm a crazy person. That's probably the real reason, to be fair, because, for the Americans and for the Yanks, we really don't have, I guess in a lot of cases, right? You might know somebody that is sort of a Premier League fan and maybe you inherit it from them, or a friend you might have as a Premier League fan. They sort of introduce you to it. Wasn't really the case with me. I think majority of my friends didn't really pay attention much to European football or Premier League football in general. My parents certainly didn't. They were more interested in kind of other sports as well. And so I kind of just introduced myself to it. And then when I kind of introduced myself to it, you sort of fall in love, I think, maybe especially more across the seas, maybe since you're so far away, you probably more fall in love with players, I think, at first, like kind of more individuals than less alone clubs and everything, because it's not like you really know anything about half these clubs kind of when you're first watching. You sort of like fall in love, I think, with a lot of players. And I think more and more watching the Premier League, like you get sort of a sense of it, like which team is which, and which players you're sort of falling in love with. And to be honest, the majority of the time I really absolutely loved like Gareth Bale and Luka Modric, because those were sort of the players that I was like first sort of introduced with. And then I did also like the look of White Hart Lane. I kind of liked sort of the big pillars, like, and everything like that. I'm a big fan of Craven Cottage, like, as well. And so those sort of kind of historic looking stadiums. And I also like the fact, like I said, that Spurs sort of had like good technical players, but also had this sort of reputation of they should be good, but they always find a way to, be kind of bad, in some manner. And I kind of liked that. I liked that sort of whole thing. But if I'm going to be truthfully honest, Ryan, I think it's more me falling in love with Luka Modric and Gareth Bale, and then that just sort of like developing more into kind of a love for the club. And then also maybe me being a bit delusional as well probably comes into
I also want to add on back of one thing Jack said there about White Hart Lane. I described about, the history of Arsenal and Tottenham and that book. But when my old lad started bringing me to White Hart Lane, that's when I knew, officially. I was already hooked, but that's when it sort of became my DNA is what I would say, being there. Look, Spurs fans, I think, are some of the best people on planet Earth. I think we're all slightly a little bit crazy in a good way, and I remember being in the stadium and stuff like that. And even as a young lad, I was like, I'm here, I'm with my people. These are my people, Absolutely loved White Hart Lane, and that definitely cemented it for me.
Yeah. Anything else either of you two want to add on to that, or?
One more thing. So when my old lad used to, and this is a bit of advice for maybe parents and kids out there, when my old lad used to bring me down to play and practice and stuff like that, like when I was a wee little nipper, not only did he have me in the back garden trapping the ball with left hand, right foot and stuff like that, and I think it's very important that, you get that into your child early, ball footed and stuff like that. But when he used to bring me down to the park, to the goals and stuff like that, he would never let me score. And I know people are going to say, 30-something-year-old man against a 4-year-old kid, why is he not letting him score? Bit harsh and all. But I remember, I asked my father that one day, and he said, look, Dave, when you go in to play for a team, that opposition goalkeeper is not just going to let you score because you can't shoot. You have to learn. You have to come up, learn to put it to the side of the goalkeeper, learn to put it in top corner, bottom corners and stuff like that. And what it done is it made me more determined, go away, start practicing my shooting. So then eventually when he was bringing me down to the park, I was megging him. I was sticking it to the left of him, to the right of him and stuff like that. So I encourage every parent, maybe not let your kid win, but when they come and ask you why, give them the advice and send them off to work harder.
At what age did he start throwing in the Romero 2-footed tackles on you, Dave?
Lad, about 5 or 6,
Okay,
I remember
he
one
waited
day,
a little bit. He waited a few more years.
I was so used to skinning my mother, right? Using her as sort of like a dummy, step overs, megging her and stuff like that.
So he was the sweeper. So he was the sweeper. He cleared you out.
He was starting to get pissed off that I was putting goals by him. So next thing he started coming out, taking me out and everything else. He was like, next step, son, you got to learn how to handle yourself, the contact side of the game.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So let's get down to what we're actually here for today, to be honest, and that's to talk about Tottenham. Well, let's just start off with the managerial state, shall we? With Nagelsmann. Well, what's your opinion on it, Dave? Like at the moment, the way that the state of the search is going.
Look, I said a few weeks ago, it's something that we should have got onto straight away. We shouldn't have pissed about with Stellini and the repercussions of it, I get people saying to me, Dave, what have we got to offer them and stuff like that when you go and speak to them? 100% get it. But I also said, look at the repercussions by us not acting first. Pochettino's on his way to Chelsea. It's coming towards the end of the season. It looks like Ancelotti's out in Madrid. So any other managers we have lined up, they're going to look at that job first before they even come to Tottenham. So now we're sort of playing a catch-up game. But look, it does look like that. I would say that they've sort of clarified the direction the club wants to go in, and it's not bringing in an elite level win now manager. It's more of a guy that plays, who's got sort of fresh ideas to the game. Plays on the front football. Doesn't need massive amounts of money. He'll work with what's there, and you can bring in other players at a reasonable price, and he can work with them. And basically, a manager that's going to enhance the player's skills and look to learn and develop them rather than someone that just comes in, no, you're not good enough, go and spend £80 million and get me a guy that is. So it does look like that we are going back to that approach that we had when we had a Pochettino, for instance, when we had a Martin Jol, which is a route that has served Tottenham well. Look, with Nagelsmann, I'm not going to sit here and deny that he's a good coach. I think he's a good coach, tactically flexible and that, which is what people want. But for me, there's more to being a good coach and tactically flexible. And a lot of people sort of, get a stiffy over his saying where it's like 70% the psychological, 30% training or whatever that stupid quote is. Great, sounds fluffy, great, everything else, right? But the reality is, he can't be that good at the psychology if the Bayern Munich squad weren't taken to him. And that's what cost him his job. They didn't trust him. They didn't like the guy as a man manager, as a personal sort of manager, someone they could go and speak to. And the reason why is because there was a reporter working for Bild at the time, and her specific job for Bild was Bayern Munich, cover Bayern Munich. Nagelsmann got in an affair with her, and all of a sudden, stories are being leaked left, right, and center, and they're still having that problem to this day. I only read an article last week about Bayern players fed up with stuff being leaked into the press and stuff coming out like that. So for me, I worry about that, because how are players supposed to trust this guy? How are players who have personal issues supposed to go and speak to this guy and trust that it's going to be kept in-house? And as a manager, if you don't have trust, you have players that don't want to work for you, that don't want to run for you. And you need that. You need players that want to run through brick walls for you and stuff like that. And I think ultimately that's where, if he still has her around, that's where it's not going to work out at Tottenham for me. If it's sort of cleared up, swept under the carpet, or dealt with, I think the guy has a chance to succeed at Tottenham. However, I think I was not impressed with some of the stuff I've seen coming out of Bayern Munich. It's like the new romance affected his management. It affected his judgment. Like Bayern Munich were giving out that he was on a skiing holiday when they were behind Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, and they are behind Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, and they had them coming up. A lot of the Bayern hierarchy weren't happy with that. They're like, well, it doesn't set a good sample. It doesn't set a good tone. And the reason why he done that, where he may never have done it before, is because of the new romance. And it's like, we've seen what personal problems or off-the-field problems can do to a club like Tottenham. It derailed our season this season. Conte wasn't fully invested. His eye was taken off the ball, which meant players were allowed to slack, and he could never reclaim that back. And I don't want to go through another season like that. So that would be my only negative towards someone like Nagelsmann. And I think it is something we have to take into consideration, because I know people are going to say, Dave, that's a bit far-fetched. That's this, that's that. But I listen to a lot of podcasts where referees, managers, ex-players, anything I can get my hands on, I listen to them. And they give great insight. And it's not only always just about coming in, these are my tactics, this is the training drills, get out and do it. There has to be that relationship there. And if that ain't there, it's going to go tits up. So for me, that's my reservation on Nagelsmann, but I'm not doubting that he's a good coach, because when you look at the other jobs he's done at Leipzig, at the, who was it before that, Jack, before Leipzig?
Hoffenheim,
right? He was invested in his job. All of his focus was on his job. He was settled. He was with his childhood sweetheart, everything else. So he had a settled off the pitch life, which then meant he could throw everything he had into managing that football club. Same at Leipzig. At Bayern, that changed, and he ended up being sacked for the first time in his career. So we do see how the off-the-field issues affect, stuff at the football club. And Tottenham needs 100% focus right now. 100% focus. So that's where I'm sort of at with Nagelsmann. If there's personal issues and that sorted out, okay. If they're not the right time.
Well, Jack, are you a happy clapper for him, or are you an unhappy clapper with him?
I think I could be a happy clapper for Julian. I could probably be a happy clapper for the tea lady, Ryan. With Nagelsmann, I feel like Dave is right that it's not as much tactical reasons that he was really sacked. It was pretty much, if you gave it to like a percentage, I think you could probably put it down like 80% of it being like all this sort of off the field sort of drama, as well as sort of just stuff that was going around that was basically turning into what turned out to be a bit of a toxic kind of dressing room, and then a bit of a toxic atmosphere kind of at the Bayern training ground and at the Bayern campus in general. And this is not something they're usually kind of, I think it happens because it's known as FC Hollywood, but at the same time, they deal with it quite swiftly, right? They'll deal with it quite ruthlessly. And if they think that Nagelsmann is the source of it, and they think he is the one that ultimately is contributing to it the most, they dealt with it. And I think that's what's interesting, right? Is that we're not really having as many doubts over Nagelsmann about sort of what he can do tactically, or like whether he is sort of good enough for the Premier League, on sort of the football mind. But it's more just like what Dave said. It's like anybody that gets sacked from any job for it not being related to the job reasons, like things outside of the job being the reasons that you got sacked, are always a bit concerning. And that goes with any walk of life, I think, right? If you got sacked for, things that had to do less with, you actually at the job, more things to do with you outside of your workplace, often do maybe show, right, that your head is not in the right place, your head's not focused maybe on your job, or you might not even be, let's say, showing up to work with, let's say, the best sort of mindset each and every day. Even though you might be doing quite well, you're still not doing as good as you probably could be doing. And I think that is a concern for Nagelsmann. But at the same time, on a tactical level, I think he could probably be quite good. I mean, we're already seeing guys like De Zerbi and sort of young, let's say attack-minded, as well as front foot managers, kind of doing quite well in the Premier League. I think what's clearly becoming the case is that the way the Premier League is nowadays, it's just so fast, and the way that the game transitions, and that the way that the sort of best teams play, you see how quickly the game moves with sort of the best sort of teams and everything. I think that's a big difference maybe between sort of the early 2000s and then kind of nowadays, is that when you see a Liverpool and a Man City play at their best, it's just sort of moving at 100 miles an hour the way the game goes. And I think Nagelsmann is a guy that could probably be able to achieve that and be able to play at that sort of level of genius. I'm only a tiny bit worried, though, about the fact that he's never been exactly the most competent defensively. Like, he's always been a bit leaky in the back, especially the Bundesliga. You leak a lot of goals in the Bundesliga in that German league. So I'm a bit worried about the fact that he could go into the Premier League either a bit naive or just still needing to work on some things defensively, kind of because he does leave his teams a bit exposed, I think, in the back at times. But at the same time, he asks a lot of his center backs. Like, his center backs are often some of the better players in the team because they're usually the ones that often have the ball and are usually able to sort of progress the ball, like a Pep Guardiola team. Like some of, Pep Guardiola's best players are usually the center backs, and Nagelsmann is sort of a similar thing. So that does mean the end of Eric Dyer and Sanchez and all those people. So if Nagelsmann can get rid of those guys right away, that could also be a good thing.
Okay, interesting. Just briefly then, Jack, and then I'll come on to ask you your opinion on this one after, Dave. What do you think about Slot maybe fitting in, Jack? Are you a happy clapper for him, or are you more of a poison chat? Do you think he's more of a poison chalice?
Arne Slot, you said?
Yeah.
I like Mr. Snot, but Arne Slot, I think he's young, man. I think he's a bit similar to the likes of Company, I think, where it's like you can only achieve so much with how long your career is, right? He's only been in management for so long, and he's actually done incredible, you could say, for how short his managerial career has been. Like, he's been able to lead Feyenoord to a title, which they haven't achieved in like over 2 decades or like something like that, or almost close to, which is very impressive considering he's still a very young and naive manager. He's taken the likes of Feyenoord to a Conference League final, in the first ever Conference League competition ever, which also had a lot of, build up and sort of kind of nobody really knew how it was going to work or kind of, what it was going to be like. And they went quite far and quite convincingly. And they had a lot of good players come out of it. And there are a lot of players even right now that you would absolutely rate from Feyenoord. That Sinisterra guy left, that Jimenez guy, and from Mexico, he seems to be quite good. Big number 9. They have, I think, this guy named, forget, it's like Teals or like Tells or like something like that. And I think he's like, supposed to be up and coming Dutch kid, that Turkish guy, Kokchu. And, they seem to have, a decent team over there that he's built. But I think it's just like Company, where it's like, what is it? I think Dave once said it's like 3 or 4 years he's only really been in management. Yeah. And so it's just sort of like, yeah, you're doing a great job, probably better than like almost, you're doing as good as you could be probably in 3 or 4 years of management. But like, that doesn't mean you automatically get the Spurs job. Like, that doesn't mean like you just get to sort of cheat your way through and just get that huge jump up. Sometimes that is the case. The managers get that and then they can do really well with it. But that's where you're left to be concerned. Like, he still has a lot to learn. Still has a lot to learn. Despite how good he comes across, he still has a lot to learn.
Yeah. Do you know what? I agree with Jack on that. I think that's the most important point when it comes to Arne Slot, is that he has a lot to learn. Look, this guy, I've no doubt, he's going to go on and be a good manager, right? But look, let's be honest, the guy's only been a coach since 2019. I'm not sitting here, denying his coaching ability. He's done a great job with AZ Alkmaar. Jack alluded to it, the job he's done at Feyenoord, right? But for me, it's clear that he's too good for Holland. But I think coming into the Premier League is a different ballgame altogether. You're up against tactically astute managers. You're seeing the best of the best managers come to the Premier League. Some of them taking over.
Look how long it took Ten Hag to get his job in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be a good example, right? Like he probably needs, like you said, Dave, too good for the Dutch league. Is like clearly, like smacking it over there, like, and should be given some Bundesliga job, a job maybe someplace else, maybe even challenge himself, go to Spain, go to Italy, go to France or something like that, or even take a smaller Premier League job, take a smaller team, like maybe more of a team that's coming into the Premier League, or a team that's like a Crystal Palace, right? Crystal Palace are looking for a new manager. He'd be an interesting guy to take over that sort of team. Like,
speaking of Palace, Jack, they brought in, wasn't it, De Boer? Too soon. Look how it worked out. Palace didn't get a sniff. I think it was 6 to 8 games, believe. And they ended up sacking him more or less straight away. And this is where I think the risk comes in with Arne Slot. I think Jack's hit the nail on the head. And I was actually thinking that Bundesliga for me would be his next natural step. And then once he sort of proves he can cut the mustard there, then maybe you look at him potentially for the Premier League. But to go from a club like Feyenoord to a club like Tottenham, it's a different animal. He's got a lot more to deal with, a lot more people in his ear and stuff like that. And it's a complete different sort of animal, different size football clubs. And I just feel he's got a lot more to learn before he would be able to cut his mustard in the Premier League. And that's why I would be a bit taken aback by maybe an Arne Slot appointment. Don't get me wrong. I think he'd bring a good, exciting brand of football. I think it might be a bit naive for the Premier League. I think with the Premier League, you've got to be a bit more tactically smarter. Like I said, you're up against guys who, they know football inside out. Even look at Aston Villa, look at their manager, Unai Emery, tactically astute, stuff like that. And it's like, for me, I just don't think Arne Slot would be able to sort of live or thrive within sort of the names that are in the Premier League dugouts at the minute. I think he'll always sort of be tactically found wanting at times. So for me, like, if you're going to go down the Arne Slot route, I'd rather give it to a Postecoglou, if you want me to be brutally honest. But Jack, I think the most important point on Arne Slot is Jack makes it correct, is the experience. Maybe it's just too soon.
And you only have so much experience available to you, right? Like, you've only lived so many years, you've only been in management so long, and he's done. And I think it's the same argument with Kompany. In fact, I don't even know how much I would get into Kompany, because I think it's a copy and paste sort of argument where it's just like at Anderlecht. In fact, he wasn't exactly the most convincing, which is kind of interesting. And whereas like Slot did well at Alkmaar, is now like destroyed at Feyenoord, so like he deserves now like an upgrade. But Kompany had a fantastic year with Burnley and has had probably the best year you possibly could have. At the end of the day, it's only 1 year, and like he needs more time and more experience, and like before he gets that big of an upgrade, I feel like. And I understand he comes from the Premier League and he's one of the Guardiola disciples, and everybody's hunting for those Guardiola disciples, but like it's the same thing. Like, you only have so much experience, and that doesn't mean you automatically get a job like Spurs for that.
Like, and I know people probably point to Pochettino, look where he was before Tottenham hired him. But the reality is he had Premier League experience. He cut the mustard with Southampton on promotion. So for me, I think it's a little bit different if you're going to say sort of look at Pochettino, because he had experience in the Premier League. He already showed what he could do. He already showed the development of players under his leadership. A lot of them went on to represent England and stuff like that. So there was already signs of what Pochettino could do in England before we hired him. And that's why I would say Arne Slot, not convinced.
Interesting.
You look like
I wasn't actually expecting it from either of you two, actually, to be honest. I was thinking you'd all be, I thought Jack would be happy clapping a bit more than what he normally does. But I know at the moment there's not really much to happy clap about, is there, really, when we get down to the
I like the manager list, though, Ryan, for the most part. I actually, as much as I think we just sort of laid both foundations of it, but I for the most part, like, even if I don't want Brendan Rodgers at all, and he seems to be like the worst candidate that's been offered, but the fact that he's sort of like the worst candidate of all the ones that's been like promoted or like kind of offered most recently, I think is not a bad thing. Like, and they all seem to have things in common. Like, you could see like some sort of, at first I didn't think there was any Venn diagram, but I think there is sort of a Venn diagram that you can draw up with these
Yeah.
managers. I think there is something
Well,
they all have in common, like in certain areas, and that's
yeah, because literally,
than what we're
I
used
see it
to.
as like Slot would be like I've said this on this channel. A few, I think I've even said it on your chat on your channel, Dave, where he's defensively good, but I've also like said that the point is with this he could not work with players like Dyer. He couldn't. There's no way
No
that
manager will.
not Slot, not Nagelsmann, none of them could. He needs to be the first one to go, to be honest. I personally think he's the first one that needs to go.
I just want to say on the manager list as well, just quickly right now. Like, I know if someone's watching this, they're going to say, look, guys, you're going to be very picky. At the end of the day, you have to take someone, and, you can always find a reason not to take one of them, right? But I would like to think that, me personally, I'm good at foreseeing problems coming down the road. I've seen it with the defense and stuff like that. I would like to think that I am. I even said it when we hired Conte. If you don't sign centre backs, it's going to end in tears. I would like to see. I can see problems arising down the road, and I think it's only right to sort of highlight them instead of sitting there going, "Yeah, this is the guy for the job." I think it is important to highlight, weaknesses or areas where it may not work out, especially at such a pivotal time in Tottenham Hotspur, where this manager position, it's got to be spot on. You're in a position where you lose Harry Kane, your headaches at Tottenham as a manager become twice as big. Because the hardest thing to do in football is put the ball in the back of the net. You've got one of the best guys in the world to do that. When you have to find a new way of playing and a new system and a new guy that can deliver on a regular basis and try and sort out that defense, it makes your job so much more bigger. Whereas if you've already got one area of your pitch sorted out, you already know coming into that job what area you need to sort out and how to go about it. But when you have both areas as a problem, and you see it with many managers going into everything, you don't know where to start. You do not know where to start. And in effect, you don't really get any of them sorted out. So I do think it is worth pointing out on some of these things with the manager. However, whatever manager is employed off that list, I can see myself getting behind. I can see what they're going to try and bring to Tottenham. I can see it. So although we're pointing out, or I'm pointing out maybe some of the negatives, if they come, I'm going to get behind them. I always do.
Yeah. Just before we continue, guys, if there is anyone that wants to leave a comment for Dave or Jack, be free to leave a comment in there, and please smash the like button and hit that subscribe button. Not just to me, but to Dave and Jack, because they're on their way to 10K, and seriously, they need that help. Just give them a nice big push, please, for their sake. Please give them a big push. Much love to these two for even coming on today. But if there's a comment you want to leave on the thing for either the two lads, they'll be more than willing to answer it, as well as if it's to all of us. I'll be willing to answer it as well. So, please get your comments in. Anyway, getting back onto the subjects. What would you like to see? Because obviously we've heard from the interview from TalkSport yesterday from David Webb, I think it was. I only watched it last night, so I want to get your thoughts on it. But do you think it was the right thing for him to come out and talk about all that, or do you think he should have been less or more? That's to both of you. So whoever wants to start can take it away.
Yeah, look, I'll start. Is it the right thing to do? I mean, if I'm in his position, yeah, of course it is. I'm not going to continue, making me look bad over something that's not my issue, and he's sort of been proven since that guy's gone that, he wasn't the problem at Tottenham. And this is the thing, there's a perception lately at Tottenham that the new players coming in are the problem, that managers are the problem, that the scouting people are the problem, that the DOF is the problem, this, that, and the other. They're not. David Webb alluded to it, We put all the package together. I'm head of elite recruitment from 17s to senior team. Basically put the deal on a plate, get it done. For reasons I'm not privy to, it's pulled. Most likely financial reasons, and he's right to speak out, and you need more people to speak out. Look at Man United. It's sort of players coming out and speaking out, ex-players, ex-staff, people like that coming out and speaking about Man United. Look at the sort of change it sparked them to do. And, they're in the process of trying to sell the club now and everything else. So, when you see a club the size of Tottenham Hotspur with, and I know people are going to laugh, but fuck yourselves, because we do have history. The history that Tottenham Hotspur have. The FA Cups, the European Cups, the first double win inside and stuff like that. It's kind of like, we've got the history there. When you see a club like that going backwards and you're seeing such high turnover of staff across all aspects, like I alluded to, there's problems there. And it can't be the problems that you keep rotating. Sometimes you've got to look at the hierarchy. And someone like Webb, he's well within his rights to come out and speak out. It sort of just confirms what many fans were thinking. Even to this day, the guy's bringing in Jed Spence. It's not what Conte wanted. If you would have brought Porro in at the start of the season, who knows? Who knows? And it's kind of like, I think he's spot on, personally.
Jack?
I mean, I don't see, unless anybody that basically either works for Levy or is Levy, that would be, that disappointed with it. I think at the end of the day, we're getting some sort of insight, on the inner workings of the club, either from the past or maybe still today, right? Of how it works. That's the interesting bit is that still how it works today? Probably, I think, in some capacity, but it'd be interesting to find out, like, if there's been anything sort of change, because he was, there a while ago, right? It's like a lot has changed, since then. And to be fair to David Webb, a lot of people have been sort of sacked and gotten rid of, kind of like him in a similar manner. So he could maybe be coming out and sort of kind of explaining, on sort of behalf of himself, as well as maybe colleagues of his and things like that, about maybe why it is that, sort of Spurs are going through so many, and why it is maybe that the recruitment is so poor, right? Because everybody's blaming the scouting department, everybody's blaming the recruitment, as well as, of course, Daniel Levy. I mean, first, people are blaming Daniel Levy, but they are going down to the recruitment and scouting department. So I don't even know if he sees it this way, but maybe in some sort of weird sort of sense, he is kind of maybe defending his sort of reputation, as well as some of the reputations of people that have worked at Spurs that are clearly been quite successful since they've left Spurs, because they've been maybe, recently been put under the light, the microscope about, certain transfers, certain people that have come in. Even me, myself, have spoken about how much money has been wasted, on certain players, etc. And they're probably, guys like David Webb maybe wanting to come out and saying, listen, I actually did have a better player lined up that I actually had through the door, that I had through the building, but couldn't sign this guy because Daniel Levy, once I passed it off to him, just said no, and he turned him away. And I think that's what it is. And maybe his guys who are defending their reputation, defending sort of the job that they might have been doing there, and, explaining maybe why things weren't perfect and why things didn't go successfully. I think that's how it probably is. And the only people that I would see would be upset about it would be probably Daniel Levy. I think he's the only person that's probably upset about it, that it's come out.
I want to be fair to Levy, just quickly, not fair to Levy, but I understand, if some of the deals were taken off the table because the club are being extorted. You do get some footballers that come with inflated egos. They're demanding massive money, and Tottenham, especially back then, had a very tight wage structure. Even Harry Kane wasn't on a lot back then, and you had players probably coming in demanding more than what the majority of the squad was on, and that then kicks up a fuss, right? You will then have all your other players there going straight up to him, going, hang on, I want the same. Look at the service I've been giving Tottenham. I want more. And then it completely descends into chaos. So I can understand if he's got an idiot coming in demanding more than what our best player is on, like Jack said there, agents demanding huge fees, this, that, and the other. I can get it. However, David Webb did say that, Daniel Levy likes to throw his ideas, his thoughts in on the actual quality of the player. That's where my issue comes in. That's not his remit. It's not his role. It's not what he went and studied. It's not what he got into football for in the first place. He is a numbers man. So, when it comes to a player that maybe he's sort of unsure at, where maybe the numbers look slightly high, or it's like, oh, it's this guy wants to come in and he wants the same as Son, for instance, so I give it to him. That's when he needs to rely on people like David Webb. and rely on his intuition, rely on his knowledge, everything that he's built up to get to the point he's at, and say, okay, you believe in this guy is really good enough? I'm going to take that gamble. Because you can't run a football club on numbers alone. Sometimes you have to identify a talent, and you're not always going to get a player in cheap that you're going to sell on for massive. Sometimes there's a player there where you can see before any other club, this guy's going to be world class. And the club that's selling knows that, and they might want a good premium on him. But sometimes you got to sanction that. You got to listen to the people for the longer term game. You know, Luka Modric at the time, I would argue people thought we were crazy for paying the 12 million we did. Look how that one worked out. You know what I mean? People at the, Gareth Bale at the time, we got that one over the line. Big fee for a guy of his age at the time. Look how that one ended up working out. So this is where I say, if it comes down to a player coming in and trying to take the piss out of the club, fair enough. I understand that, right? Because squad harmony and all them other issues that it creates. But if it's a player where it's sort of, a talent and people are really pushing him, I think that's where he's got to listen. You don't make that call based off numbers. You don't have a say on the talent of the guy. There's a reason why you pay the wages you do, hire these people the way you do, so that you can get the right advice. And clearly he's not taking it.
Yeah, no, I believe that as well. To be honest, I think he should have come out a bit more, to be honest. Dave, I think he should have been fully transparent because I thought there were things that were still a little bit shady, but I think it could have.
Just on that, Ryan, right? Just on that quickly, right? I get what you're saying, buddy, right? But look what happened to the scout that went on Colombian TV and gave away our scouting targets. He lost his job. This guy is sort of in between jobs, right? And it's kind of like, if he starts spilling all the secrets, what club's going to touch him? He ain't. Because you can't trust this guy. Everything in football now, everything's kept in-house, and it's always sort of tried to be like that. Even when I listen to ex-players speak, they've always there's some stuff gets out, but a lot of the stuff that actually happens doesn't. Everything's kept in-house. So this guy, as much as we want him just to come out and go bang, 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 you got to understand this guy wants, he's got family, he's got a wife, he's got kids he needs to look after. And he also, he's relying on football to basically give him that money to be able to go and do that. It's what his expertise are. So he's never, ever really going to come out and do it because he's not a guy that's made millions out of football. He's on the bottom rung in the terms of wages and stuff like that. So, he can't come out and do that because the next club are going to look up and go, hang on, this guy spills all the beans. He's a leak. He ain't coming into this football club. So I don't think you're ever really going to truly get that from guys like that. You might get them at the tail end of their career or when they're sort of finished with football, fine. But I don't think you're going to get it from a guy like that right now at his age who's still looking to create, go higher up in the footballing world.
Okay, well, this is where part of the show where I actually now open it up for anybody who wants to have a rant out of the two of you, or both of you, one at a time. So this is where it's called therapy session.
Give it to Jacko. Jacko,
so is there anything that either of you two want to actually have a nice big rant about and to get it off your chest? Because it's down to you, because I've got things I want to say, but I'll let you
go first, Ryan.
So whoever wants to go first.
Ryan, you go first because I wish I could shut up more. So you go first.
All right. Oh, first of all, Levy is where I think needs to be dealt with personally. He personally should stop putting properties ahead of football decisions. Stop giving people like Dyer new contracts when he doesn't need them. He should stop giving Sanchez and Floppy Hands a new contract because one, Sanchez ain't a good enough defender. Get him out. Two, Floppy Hands, after what he did at Newcastle, just standing there. Get him out. He doesn't deserve a club. Foster deserves a new contract. If anybody deserves a new contract there, to be honest. So, literally, Levy, you need to stop and you need to start thinking of football decisions instead of your big pocket of where your money's going to come from. So realistically, you either do that or you get out of our club and sell up quickly. One of the two options you've got. Make your choice.
Yeah. Look, I think when it comes to Levy, when it comes to Enid, you got to look at it, right? The business, the club they built up to a certain point, I'd argue maybe the season before the Champions League final, right? The Champions League final sort of masked over what was happening. You lost Wanyama Dembele out in the middle over the course of that Champions League season. Toby and Jan were sort of getting on. You could see it sort of falling apart over the course of that league campaign. But we got very lucky in the Champions League final because we were so elated with that. No one really sort of spent time on it or discussed it really and stuff like that, which is understandable. But the club was going in the right direction. Everything seemed like it was going in the right direction. We bought up everything around Tottenham. We built a new stadium, art training complex. You had a manager who, helped with that transition by being able to develop a lot of young players. He went 3 windows without any signings, stuff like that. But when the crunch time came around to go, look, this squad got us so far. The manager's been brilliant. He went 3 windows without any signings. Some of the signings we brought him in, like an Nkudu and a G and stuff like that, haven't really cut the mustard. But the reason why that's happened is because all of our finances went into the stadium, the training complex and stuff like that. And instead of going, you know what, all this needs is just a second go at the cherry. Start upping the value of the players like we promised to do with the new stadium and the income of the new stadium and stuff like that. It's bringing better quality players and re-go again. They chose not to do that. They thought they would be clever. They thought they could bring in Jose Mourinho because the problem with Pochettino at the end was he lost Dembele and Wanyama. Wanyama was the protector of the back four. Dembele could pick up the ball and run from one end of the pitch to the other with it without being knocked off it. So we spent the majority of our time on the ball. Once we lost them and put in Winks and Sissoko, we spent the majority of our time without the ball. And what was happening then is Poch's biggest problem was at the end because that protection wasn't there because we didn't have the players that were good enough on the ball. Our defence then was sort of, we'd already lost Walker and Rose. Toby and Jan were sort of coming to the end. And we never really rejuvenated it. And it was becoming a problem under Pochettino because we were conceding goals. We were still scoring goals, but we were conceding them. Instead of going, do you know what, let's back Pochettino, let's give him the defence he needs, and let's push on and start rebuilding from there. They thought they'd be clever, and they go, do you know what, we don't have to pump in millions of pounds here. We're going to get the best defensive coach in the world. He'll make Dyer a better defender. He'll make Sanchez a better defender. He'll deform our defence out of him. Quickly realised he couldn't do it. That wasn't the case. And since then, rather than just go and spend money on the obvious issue, they've chopped and changed with managers, and that's because it's the cheapest thing to do. And at the time, a lot of the stadium costs were spiralling. People were asking questions. How's this happening, etc. So Daniel Levy took his eye off everything else. He started relying on more experienced people in the game. That's why you started seeing likes of Jose Mourinho coming in, a Conte coming in. That's why you're seeing him hand things over to Hitchin and Paratici and stuff like that, because he doesn't know how to get back on track. He lost all complete running of the club because he purely focused on the stadium to try and keep the finances down. So he doesn't even know where to begin anymore. All the problems have culminated at once. The clog up of the youth system and not producing enough players. The way they're loaned out. The players that we brought in under Hitchin and Paratici, they're sort of coming in and going out the door before any of the longer-term issues and stuff like that. Then you've got the issues with the managers who are saying, look, the squad isn't good enough, but the club are like, well, what do we do? We're midway through the season. This can't continue, so we'll sack you because it's the easiest thing to do. Then they realize, oh, shit, why are we signing so many duds? Oh, fuck, our scouting department is depleted. So it's like they don't even know where to get back on board or where to start fixing the issue. And that's where the problem comes in for me. Look, I get people that made the argument for 22 years and stuff like that. For me, I think the club that I supported as a boy to where they brought it to, but just the season before the Champions League final, I don't really have too much arguments with, to be honest with you. It's what's happened since then is where my problems come in, and they've lost complete running of the club.
Is that your rant then, Dave, or is that just something you was Add
That
it
was a
on
good
to
Oh, no,
one.
I
mine
have
because
another
you
one
can
I
have
want to
your
go
own back if
after,
you want it.
no problem. But we'll let Jacko in on. I don't know if Jacko's decided on something. I don't want to be taking up all Jack's airtime because these shows are great for Jack because we get to hear more of his opinions, And I find myself agreeing with him a lot today.
Dave, I think that was an interesting rant, to be fair. I think, if anything, the younger Spurs fans probably would sort of see it that way. I find it, if most Spurs fans, if not all Spurs fans, regardless of age group, probably should feel like since the Champions League final, Spurs have gone backwards, plateaued, whatever it has been, in some way, they haven't gone in the direction that we probably would have liked. But everything before that, especially during those Pochettino years, I mean, it's kind of hard to really imagine that there was really all that much grief, or really why there would be, because Spurs at the time were sort of everybody's second favorite team. They were sort of a team that a lot of people was falling in love with. And I'll be honest too, I do believe a lot of American Spurs fans that didn't either fall in love with sort of the Gareth Bale, Harry Redknapp kind of years. They probably fell in love more with the Pochettino years. I really doubt they were falling in love with Spurs during the Villas-Boas, sort of times, and things like that. And but then still right during the Villas-Boas years, Europa League and finishing, in the European places and competing up there was still obviously an improvement on what was before. And I think obviously there could be maybe even an interesting sort of gap between what's younger Spurs fans have experienced versus older Spurs fans. Older Spurs fans have seen us kind of go through every position throughout the table, right? They've seen us be some, basically Premier League champions or FA Cup, winners, to, the likes of, finishing in the very bottom rungs of sort of the table and, kind of consistently finishing in and around there. And then now all of a sudden, the younger Spurs fans are sort of used to basically anything higher than eighth. As sort of a finish for Spurs. And that's also a completely different dynamic. And it's an interesting sort of thing I think about Daniel Levy, is that he's sort of had two different, he's inheriting basically, different generations and different generations of fans, right? Where one generation of fan that might be a bit younger probably likes the flashy stadium, likes all the flashy players that we get in the summer, and as well as also the new managers. I mean, to be honest, one of the reasons I even fell deeper in love with Spurs, if not I was already in love with Spurs, was like the fact that Pochettino was replaced with Jose Mourinho. I mean, it gave me an absolute hard on, to be fair. Like, and it was something that it was a moment for me that I was like, holy shit, like we're a big club, it feels like now, because doing that sort of move felt like very big baller type of move to do that sort of thing, to like drop Pochettino for a guy like Jose Mourinho, who's been there, done that, won things, as well as also has that sort of alpha male energy that maybe was sort of a bit kind of foreign to Spurs. Spurs have never been a club that really likes that type of guy or that type of manager or anything like that either. So I honestly thought before really the end of the champion, before basically even during, after the Champions League final and everything, when Jose was, hired, I kind of thought we were still headed in the right direction, to be honest. It really did. And I think just since then, what basically the biggest mistake that of the many, 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 many mistakes that Levy has made, I think probably the key to the mistake that maybe a lot of us don't really speak about enough and maybe doesn't get enough sort of light is the fact that he basically saw Pochettino finish second and go to a Champions League final with the likes of Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, Eric Dyer, Sanchez, these guys as sort of backups, right? He must have thought with an aging Toby and an aging Jan that Eric Dyer and Sanchez could have been good enough basically to win a league title, with the likes of Jose. He seemed to have somehow thought that Jose Mourinho could inherit the same defense that was starting to sort of cripple Pochettino, and Jose Mourinho could take that same defense without a lot of investment and turn it into basically a Champions League winning or a, sort of title winning sort of team. And Jose, for the most part, in the beginning was convincing people of that, but definitely later on, like it like every other manager just came to crumble, in front of our very eyes. So I think probably the most laughable mistake that maybe isn't probably brought up enough, because I think Levy definitely gets absolutely hyper analyzed to a real microscopic extent. One of the things that I think is glaringly obvious that's maybe not mentioned enough is that I think he actually seriously must have thought Eric Dyer, Sanchez, Ben Davies, all these sort of guys were genuinely good enough to win like a league title. Like he must have thought that, like Jan and Toby, he knew they were old because Jose inherited a very old Jan and Toby. Like they were old. And so it's not like he must have thought they could last for a few years. He just must have genuinely thought that Sanchez, Dyer, Davies were good enough to be their sort of heirs, their replacements, to take on what they had left off and take on what they had built. And that's obviously like, when you look at it, a very laughable sort of like judgment, when you look at it nowadays. But I think if anything, I don't know if you would agree with me, Ryan, or Dave would agree with me, of all the things that Levy gets really hyper analyzed for, that was obviously his decision to not invest very much in the defense and not actually, give very much funds, to a manager for it. Because I think a lot of managers wouldn't probably say they were, demanding that Davies and Dyer be sort of the starters or something like that. I think it was clear that Levy basically must have thought that they should be good enough to sort of, inherit, what was a very good Spurs team and then take it on to what could be a title or a trophy. He must have thought basically that Eric Dyer and Ben Davies and these guys were capable of winning trophies. And I don't think that gets enough light, actually. Of all the things he gets criticized for, that one's probably the most obvious that I don't think gets talked about. That's quite funny, in fact.
You're absolutely spot on there, Jack, that he believes they're good enough. You got to remember, right? They brought in Eric Dyer as a young kid.
Well, now he might not, but earlier he did.
Oh, he did. He did. Like, look, people have got a question, right? Why haven't we recruited across that back line?
Joe Rodon and Romero are the only people. Joe Rodon
and Romero and Lenglen on loan this season, right? Nowhere near good enough, right? Then why does he hire 3 defensive managers since Pochettino? Because he believes that them defensive managers is what a Sanchez and a Dyer needs, that they're good enough. They can learn off them. They can form a good unit, and that they're good enough to push us on. Now, since it's been proven that that's been wrong, but that you would have to assume that he did believe they're good enough because the lack of investment in them positions. And you can't put that on Paratici because Hitchin also didn't recruit in that area. Why have the club not recruited in that? That's clearly a club decision. We've recruited midfield a number of times. We brought in Ndombele and Lo Celso under Hitchin, cleared them out. We brought in Basuma and Bentancur under Paratici. You look at the forward areas, we brought in Bergwijn, people like that. He's gone. Now we've brought in Kulu and stuff like that. We've brought in Aurier, or we brought in Doherty and that to replace Trippier and Walker. Now we've cleared that. We've got Emerson and Porro. You go over to the left side. We've got we brought in Reguilon to replace Rose. We got rid of him. Now we brought in Perisic. So we've recruited in every other area of the pitch, bar that. And that is a clear club decision because Levy wants to believe in these guys. But also, when, Davies was able to get Nuno sacked, the reason why that happened is because the club was so shocked someone of his professionalism could turn around and complain about a guy like Nuno. So it sort of pushed them over the line to sack the guy. I'm sorry, what's Ben Davies done? What has he done at this club to deserve to be here to have that say? Eric Dyer, same thing. Sanchez, same thing. What have they done to stay here?
Well, Dave, sorry, can I just pull you up there for a second, mate?
I think they're good enough.
Just because, obviously, the only thing that I can say that Dyer's done is he's punched a fan in the face, and Levy likes that kind of thing. He likes to have for his own players to attack fans.
No, I think he went in to protect his brother. I don't think he attacked the fan. I think he went in to sort of protect his brother, wasn't it? I hate that. Again, I'm pretty sure it was he went in to protect his brother rather than attack a fan.
Hang on, Dave.
You're all good, my man. You there, Rhino?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just sorting something out. Sorry. Yeah, because I've just had a phone call come through and I can't answer it at the moment because obviously I'm live. Yeah, sorry. What was you saying, Dave? Sorry, I was
just saying, clearly Jack's right, that this guy thinks he's good enough. The fact that he listens to them on sacking managers, he believes that, these guys are good enough, whereas you wouldn't sack the manager based off their recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's awkward, isn't it, Dave? Really, because it's difficult because if you're going to give Dyer a new contract just because of the Dyer punching somebody in the face, then that's not a good enough. That's not a good enough reason to literally give someone a new contract. In my personal opinion, like in the real world, he should be locked up and thrown away, have the key thrown away. But this is football we're talking about, and unfortunately, it's a bit of a joke.
One more rant I have to go on. I don't know whether you want to hear it, Ryan.
Yeah, go on, go for it, mate.
I see a worrying trend at this football club where players that we're sort of trying to bring in to resolve the issue, we're making an issue and we speak about them and highlight it more than what it seems to players that have genuinely cost this club this season. Like Eric Dyer, you hear people go, yeah, but we know he's shit, but let's talk about Romero. You know, people say, yeah, with Hugo, yeah, we know he's past it, but let's talk about Højbjerg, you know, and stuff like that. And I'm just getting to the point where we're never going to resolve issues if we keep making people coming in here to resolve them, the issue. You know, it's sort of like nobody really wants to delve into deep on Hugo Lloris. It's sort of just brushed over. Sanchez the same. You even had people defending Sanchez because he got booed. You know, Dyer, people still defend him to this day and stuff like that. But you hear conversation being steered towards Romero, towards Højbjerg, towards Kane, you know, towards Porro now. You've seen songs being sung about Emerson at the start of the season about how crap he is. You know, Gil Messi, you Bentancur and Kudu were written off before they even arrived here. And it's like, you got to stop doing this. Like, I get there are conversations to be had on these guys in due course. Not now. Not now. You know, we've let these guys escape these conversations for 8 years. So why are we so quick to not have these conversations, but have conversations over players 2 months in, 6 months in, sometimes before they even get here? Why are we afraid?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Conversations about guys who have cost this club, and it's concerning to me. You know, a lot of the Hitchin signings we brought in, there's 3 left at this football club today in that squad. A lot of Paratici signings brought in, everyone's sitting around talking and questioning them and all. Granted, I get it, you know, but the reality is the reason why Steve Hitchin's rebuild never worked, the reason why Paratici's never worked, is because they've got the same old Dross leading the shit. Until that's sorted out, you're going to keep seeing a high turnover of players because no one's coming in, no one's settling and going, this is what we do here, don't fall below that standard. It's come in from the French mafia, the Welsh mafia, play cricket, golf, do what you want, everything but football, you know, and it's sort of like, because that culture is set, that's where you see people with such high potential coming into this club, or people with such potential that you see for a first period, it then ends up dropping off because it's like, I'm busting my bollocks, but the idiot beside me who starts week in, week out, is still collecting his wages and still playing, and he's doing fuck all. And it's sort of like, because they have a slight drop-off in form, we're so quick to analyse their game, exactly what they're weak at. Okay, then, you know, we can spend half an hour on that, but then let's spend 10 hours on Dyer's weaknesses. Why don't we go into them on that detail? Hugo Lloris's weaknesses. Why are they so protected? Why are we so quick to make new people coming in here the problem? Let's deal with the original problem first, because all that is deflection tactics. All it is. You're never going to get this club going forward in the right direction unless we sit here and have honest conversations about these guys. I have a feeling I know what it is. It's because they're sort of the last resemblance of the Poch era that reminds them of good times and everything else. But what we fail to realise is they weren't a part of that Poch thing. Davies was a backup. Sanchez was nowhere near getting in beside Toby Young. The only time he played is when there was an injury. Dyer was way off it. He barely got in. And it's like, you know, we've got to come to terms with it, that these are not the guys to bring Tottenham forward. They're at their time. Let's focus on them and let's make sure they get out rather than the new guys, because what's happening is the board, the reason why Dyer will get a new contract, because they look around social media, they look around at the discussions everywhere, and they're like, no one's talking about Dyer. They must like him. We don't have to buy anyone. It's fantastic. Let's give him a new contract. But what they are talking about is Ndombele and Lo Celso. And what happens? Out the door. So let's start having conversations on players that have cost this club. And let's stop deflecting and going on to the new guys and picking on them for a couple of games here or there. You know, I can accept. In fact, You know, these guys have 4 years worth of shit to provide me. You know, before, you know, when you compare them to what some of these other guys have done. I get, you know, the conversations need to happen and that, look, you know, this is something he needs to improve on. Fair enough. But, you know, to start going, they're not good. Are they really good enough for Tottenham, this, that, and the other? It's like, come on. Like, you know, I've heard people try and talk about Dyer and big him up, you know. I've heard people even go to the extent to say to me, but Dave, he speaks 20 languages. He's a leader. I mean, come on. Like, the excuses for some of these guys compared to how quick we are to throw some of the new guys on the carpet, it drives me insane.
Yeah. Jack, is there anything you want to say? Because obviously I know Dave's got to shoot off, and I don't know if you've got to shoot off, if you can stay a bit longer or not, because I know you're both busy. But did you want to vent anything before we go?
All I could say is, Ryan, is that this summer it just needs to be a different mentality from the club, where the club usually likes to sort of, even if they know they have a glaring problem, they'll sort of address half of it, maybe address the other part of it sort of down the road, right? This summer just needs to be sort of, no, at all costs, fix the issue that you know is glaring the most. And the defense is certainly one of them. And then there's probably some other problem areas as well when it comes to leadership and when it comes to sort of also, you know, like captaincy and things like that. And as well as just even the scouting department and various things. There's so many different things that needs to be fixed. But I think this summer just needs to be a summer of, if you need to bite the bullet, bite the bullet. If you need to sort of, if it costs 20 million more than you expected, tough luck. You know, you put yourself in this position. This is sort of what you have to pay the price for. I think we've often been there when it comes to a lot of things in life. Like, you kind of, you know, you're complaining about maybe the position you're in. And sometimes it's like, yeah, but often you're the one that put yourself in that position. Like, you know, you're the one who's kind of, you know, ultimately responsible for finding yourself there. And I think Spurs, as well as the hierarchy, need to have a bit of a reality check in that regard, where they can't just sort of look, I think they know they're deep in shit, but they need to also realize that that means they can't just sort of go about fixing it the same way they normally fix it. They need to be a lot more ruthless this time around. They need to have a different mentality entirely. So that's my last thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you both said. I think we'll wrap that up here then, guys, because I know Harris and Flatcap have actually got other things they need to do, and I appreciate they've taken their time out to actually spend an hour with me, to be honest, because someone who's as small as me, I didn't think they'd want to spend any time. I thought they were making excuses at some point. Guys.
Look, Ryan, it's an absolute
both
pleasure.
of us, man.
You know, look, I've always been of the opinion, you know, like I think people sort of forget this now, but I started off from zero. You know, I know it's like being a small fish in a big pond, you know. It's hard to sort of, you know, get some of the bigger fish to come on and stuff like that, because maybe there's no benefit to it and stuff like that for them. But, you know, look, I can only speak for myself and Jacko. For us, you know, we appreciate people that come on and help elevate our shows and stuff like that. And we'll always repay that time, man.
Yeah. Now, that last bit was a bit of a joke, but, you know, because I knew you'd come on. So, but no, much appreciated, guys. Guys, what we're going to all do, we're going to, at one at a time, we're going to literally say what we normally say, and then we're going to end the show here. So, the way it ends here is, we, Levy, you the twos, we the ones. Dave?
Come on, you Spurs.
And the Harris Army we trust.
All right, guys, cool. We'll catch up with you guys later. Till next time, peace!